welcome everyone. I'm not one of the people who believes that anybody can do absolutely anything. I really don't think that's true. And the fact that 90% of businesses that start up every year fail, I think proves my point. But it is incredible how quite often somebody quite ordinary with no particular skills like me, not quite often, occasionally gets the chance to do something quite extraordinary. If they accept the challenge, if they dig deep for some guts, and particularly if the person's concerns life depends upon it and it's not them. I'm going to tell you when I once had the chance to do such a thing for somebody else. I'll tell you the story. It was about 25 years ago when a lovely man called Richard was misfortunate enough to believe he was in love with me. Not a good idea. Happily married woman. Disastrous. But he knew one thing about me. He knew of a childhood crazy ambition that I wanted to become titled. And the easiest way to become titled is to marry a barrister, which I hadn't done. So he thought, if he became a barrister and one day a judge, I would be Lady Muck, and I might marry him. Oh, he was one of those men who can believe you can have anything you wanted. And he wanted a married woman, not a clever idea. But he pulled out all the stops. He was 45, he handed in his notice to a very well-paid job, he came up to London, he converted his degree to a law degree, he did everything. I don't know how many of you know how difficult it is to become a barrister, particularly when you're older. Then he's got to the final stage where he had to join an Inn of Court. You can't just say, I'll join any old inn, he'll have me. You have to pick one. And he picked Gray's Inn. Now, Gray's Inn admit about 900 pupils a year who've completed everything. They're all qualified. But there are about 6,000 of these people wanting 900 places. So they put lots of little obstacles in the way, in very tiny writing that nobody reads, hoping most of them will miss those extra little things they have to do out. But he hadn't. Richard had read exactly what he had to do. And he came up to this final thing he had to do, which was to get a cheque for £4,000, this is going back a long time, through a door, through a sort of grill in a great big door in Gray's Inn Road. It had to be through that door by 5:30 on a specific Tuesday. And if you didn't get it through that, you had to wait a whole another year. Now he had run out of money, he couldn't afford not to work for another year. And the worst nightmare happened on that day. The cheque, which he'd had specially got because he didn't have cheques anymore, had been packed in a furniture van, which had gone the wrong way up the motorway. He had to drive up the motorway, get the van to stop, get the cheque up, drive back to London. He got there 5 minutes too late. There's a big notice on the door saying, sorry, you're too late, try again next year. You can imagine, he burst into tears, 45-year-old strong chap that he was, and he phoned me up, the woman who wouldn't marry him, and said, Jenny, you're always telling me you know absolutely everybody. Isn't there anything you can do? Doesn't anybody owe you a favour? And I thought, God, that's a challenge I can't resist. I shouldn't show off about knowing everybody, because jolly well did. So I thought, God, what can I do? I don't keep many papers, but I did find an old address book of my parents. And although my father had been dead for a very long time, and I thought, well, all his friends are dead too, I'll just try my luck. And I could remember all the barristers who'd become High Court judges, and I went through the book. I could find, I think, 5 of them. The first 4 I phoned up all said, Jenny, no hope. That rule has never been revoked. He won't get in, he'll just have to do something else for another year. And then the one I should have phoned in the first place, a chap called Cutler, who I didn't phone because he was a bit soft on me, and I didn't want to encourage him. But I thought, oh golly, he must be about 90 now, so he'd be quite safe. I phoned him up, and I told him the story, and he said, Jenny, actually, that rule has never been revoked. It's not going to happen, but you have got one chance. There is somebody alive who will remember your father. He's in his late 90s, Lord Denning, Master of the Rolls. He is the top of the legal tree. He said, don't phone him up, just get in your car, drive down there. He lives in Whitchurch, somewhere in Berkshire, you'll find it. And just try your luck. I mean, people who know me know I can't drive from A to B. But I got in my car, I knew it was down the M4, drove down the M4, and I knew it was past Newbury because I used to live there, and I just kept going, and my car just drove to Whitchurch. So I thought, now what do I do? There was a garage. I went into the garage, and I said, do you know Lord Denning? I thought, everybody must know him. And he said, actually, the gates there, those enormous gates called the Lords, that's where he lived, but he won't get in there. Nobody gets in there. So I went up to the gate, and I pressed the thing, and the housekeeper answered, and I don't know what I said, but she let me in, and she opened the front door, and I had a little note I'd written out saying, you won't know who I am, but you just might remember my father, and I put his name. And I said, I've got a friend in the most terrible trouble. Can you give me 5 minutes of your time? So she took the note in to show him, sat me down, and then I was called through to this big drawing room, and there he was. She'd given me a little lesson about how to talk to him. A bit like Stephen Hawkins, he had a voice box in his chest. She said, talk very slowly into his chest and listen very carefully when he answers you. He was very gracious, and in came a tea trolley with smoked salmon and God knows what. I thought, wow, does he do this to everybody? Anyway, I told him the story and he listened very carefully and he looked at me and he said, that law has never been revoked. You've really wasted your time, but it's been really lovely meeting you. I'll tell you what I'll give you. I'll give you a book I've written called Speaking Plain English, because he'll have to wait another year, but when he gets in next year, because he's obviously very determined, this is going to help him be a brilliant barrister. So he gave me that book and he said goodbye. And as I went out the room, he said, you know what, Jenny? Won't do any harm to try. I do know the treasurer of Gray's Inn. I'll see what I can do. And I left. And I phoned my friend up and I said, I've done the only thing I can think of, but I don't think it's going to work. We'll just have to wait and see. 2 weeks later, he phoned me up and said, they've let me in. They've let me in. And I thought, oh my God, okay, you can't marry me. But you got the life you wanted. And I think I had something to do with it, which made me feel a lot better because I didn't want to marry him. And then I thought, gosh, you know, I've learned quite a lot from this. You can't do anything you want, but just sometimes when you get the chance, if you just take it and you just dig deep for those guts. And the one thing I learned that Leonard Cutler said to me, when you want to do something really difficult, start at the top. No messing about.